Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a matchup that, on paper, looks like your classic David versus Goliath, a massive clash between a historic footballing giant and a perennial underdog. But as we're about to see, the beautiful game rarely ever follows a script. We're going to break down the surprisingly deep, intensely competitive, and honestly pretty dramatic World Cup history between the South American powerhouse, Uruguay, and the Asian challengers, Saudi Arabia.
All right, let's kick things off with a little trivia. Picture this. It's the lead-up to the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Uruguay is stepping onto the pitch as a massive favorite against a certain team in their group. But if you cracked open the history books right before that tournament kicked off, which nation actually held a winning head-to-head record over the two-time World Cup champions? Saudi Arabia. I know, right? It's one of those wild statistical quirks that makes international football so fascinating. Okay, let's dive into this and explore exactly how this unlikely rivalry developed and the incredible redemption story that ties their two World Cup meetings together. Here is our quick roadmap for today. Number 1, a surprisingly balanced rivalry. 2, 2018, Suarez strikes. 3, 2026, the Miami showdown. And finally, number 4, the goalkeeper's redemption. Let's jump right into Section 1, a surprisingly balanced rivalry, David versus Goliath. So on one side, you've got La Celeste, Uruguay. They are absolute international royalty. We're talking about the winners of the inaugural World Cup back in 1930 and again in 1950. They consistently churn out world-class talent and regularly make deep runs into the knockout stages. Then on the flip side, you have the Green Falcons, Saudi Arabia. Now, while they're definitely a dominant force in Asia, their absolute peak on the global stage was reaching the round of 16 way back in 1994, and they've been spending decades trying to get back to that level. Just looking at the pedigrees, you totally expect Uruguay to just steamroll this matchup. But get this, the timeline tells a totally different story. Check out these 4 historical meetings. They first met in 2002 for a friendly, and Saudi Arabia absolutely shocked Uruguay with a 3-2 victory. A little over a decade later, in 2014, they slugged it out to a 1-1 draw. Think about that for a second. Heading into the 2018 World Cup, the Green Falcons had literally never lost to La Celeste. And if we fast forward to 2026, they battled to yet another 1-1 draw. It's just an incredibly deadlocked history. Which brings us to Section 2. 2018, Suarez strikes, a narrow victory in Russia. All right, let's set the scene. It's June 20th, 2018, at the Rostov Arena in Russia. This is a massively crucial Group A match. Saudi Arabia is coming off a brutal 5-0 loss to the host nation, while Uruguay had just narrowly edged out Egypt. The stakes couldn't be higher. Saudi Arabia is literally fighting for survival in the tournament, and Uruguay is desperate to lock in their spot for the last 16. The whole match actually pivoted in the 23rd minute, and man, it was a heartbreaker for the Saudis. Goalkeeper Mohamed Alawais came out to claim a Carlos Sanchez corner kick, but he completely misjudged his jump. The ball just sailed right over his fist and dropped perfectly to a totally unmarked Luis Suarez, who casually tapped it into the empty net on what happened to be his 100th international cap. That one single error sent Uruguay through to the knockouts and effectively eliminated Saudi Arabia. Now I want you to lock that name in your memory, Mohamed Alawais, because he's going to be a massive part of this story later. But despite that catastrophic mistake, Saudi Arabia didn't just fold. Not at all. As these stats show, they actually put on an incredibly disciplined performance. They kept the scoreline super tight at 1-0 and defensively frustrated Uruguay's world-class attackers, like Edinson Cavani, for the entire rest of the game. They just completely lack that final cutting edge to actually get back into the match. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the heat maps. Look at where all the action is concentrated, right smack in the middle of the pitch. Saudi Arabia actually held onto the ball pretty well, finishing with 53% possession compared to Uruguay's 47%. But as the data clearly shows, almost all of that possession was either super deep in their own half or just stuck in the midfield. They had virtually zero penetration into the attacking penalty area. They kept the ball, sure, but they just couldn't threaten the goal. Moving on to Section 3, 2026, the Miami showdown, a wide-open Group H. Fast forward to June 15th, 2026. Sweltering heat in Miami Gardens for their latest World Cup encounter. And in this match, Saudi Arabia absolutely flipped the script. As reported by Xinhua News, the Saudis took a surprise lead in the 41st minute. Off a corner kick, Hassan Al-Tambakti launched an absolute bullet header. The Uruguayan goalkeeper couldn't control it, and Abdullah Al-Lamri was right there to smash it home. Suddenly, Saudi Arabia wasn't just holding possession, they were actually leading a 2-time world champion. Uruguay, who are now managed by the legendary Marcelo Bielsa, by the way, were totally shell-shocked. They went into the locker room trailing at the half. Bielsa obviously made some tactical tweaks, notably pulling forward Darwin Núñez, which injected way more urgency into their play. Even then, it took Uruguay until the 80th minute to finally break through, when Maxi Araujo fired a rebound past the keeper from close range to rescue a 1-1 draw. Oh, and here's a super fun piece of trivia from this game. The Uruguay keeper who gave up that opening goal, veteran Fernando Muslera. By starting this game at 39 years and 364 days old, literally one single day shy of his 40th birthday, Muslera became the oldest player to ever represent Uruguay at a World Cup, beating out Diego Godin's old record. It really puts into perspective just how much time had passed between their 2018 and 2026 meetings. Let's move to our final chapter and see how this builds. Section 4. The Goalkeeper's Redemption. Mohamed Al-Owais. Okay, remember Mohamed Al-Owais? Back in 2018, his agonizing misjudgment of that corner kick basically handed Luis Suarez a free tap-in, leading directly to a 1-0 defeat and Saudi Arabia's elimination. For a goalie, that is literally the ultimate nightmare scenario on the world's biggest stage. But 8 years later in 2026, Al-Owais stepped back onto the pitch against the exact same nation, and he delivered an absolute masterclass. He didn't let history repeat itself. He completely rewrote it. I mean, the guy was a literal brick wall in Miami. Look at this string of crucial saves. In the first half, he showed off some brilliant reflexes to deny Federico Vinas a point-blank diving header. Then, in the 61st minute, he tipped this absolutely fierce shot from Manchester United's Manuel Ugarte right onto the post. And even deep into stoppage time, when Uruguay was desperately throwing everything forward for a winner, he brilliantly foiled Real Madrid star Federico Valverde. He single-handedly kept his team alive in the tournament. The media absolutely ate this up, and rightly so. Sky Sports wrote, the star of the show was Saudi goalkeeper Mohamed Al-Owais, who made a string of saves to ensure it finished a point apiece. He was officially named the player of the match, from the villain in 2018 to the undisputed hero in 2026. It's just a perfect footballing redemption arc, and it really brings the emotion of this rivalry to life. And this brilliantly illustrates just how crucial that saved point was. If we look at the Group H standings after that match, because Spain and World Cup debutants Cape Verde also played to a shock 0-0 draw earlier that exact same day, the entire group is completely deadlocked. Every single team has exactly 1 point and a 0-goal difference. It is anyone's guess who makes it out. Which leaves us with this final thought. Across more than 2 decades, Uruguay and Saudi Arabia have played 4 times. Saudi Arabia has 1 win, Uruguay has 1 win, and they've drawn twice. Even the historic goal count sits at just 4 goals for Uruguay and 5 for Saudi Arabia. It is about as perfectly balanced as a matchup can possibly get between 2 teams from opposite sides of the globe. So, as they continue their respective World Cup journeys, who do you think is going to finally step up and break the deadlock in this incredibly unpredictable rivalry? Keep a close eye on both these squads as the tournament rolls on. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.